Okay,
Ah,
it's time. What do we want to talk about?
awesome. Let's dive in. What's on your mind today?
You tell me what's the topic today.
All right, let's pick something fun or interesting. How about we chat about a recent tech trend, a cool science fact, or maybe a book or movie you've enjoyed lately?
Well, I did watch Fast and Furious 7.
Nice choice. Furious 7 is such a wild ride. The action scenes are over the top, and it's got that heartfelt tribute to Paul Walker. What did you think of it?
What do you mean? Do you think that it's good?
I think it's a blast if you're into high octane action and crazy stunts. The story might be a bit over the top, but it's all about the fun and the family dynamic. If you enjoy thrilling car chases and big explosive scenes, it's definitely a good time.
Okay, but why do they use cars to do pretty much everything, even when it doesn't make sense?
That's part of the franchise's charm. The Fast and Furious series really leans into its own over the top style, where cars are basically superhero tools. It's all about pushing the limits of what's possible and keeping things visually exciting. Plus, the audience loves those insane car moments, so they just keep ramping it up with each movie.
Okay. What's another topic?
How about we switch gears to something completely different? We could talk about the latest developments in AI, a fascinating historical event, or maybe a new hobby you've been curious about. What sounds good to you?
Um, what about the Chinese emperor? They caused the greatest number of deaths with a single decision.
That's an interesting topic. One of the most infamous decisions linked to massive loss of life was made by Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China. While not a single decision, his massive projects, like the construction of the Great Wall and his own mausoleum, led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of laborers due to harsh conditions and forced labor. Another historical figure often associated with immense casualties is Mao Zedong, particularly during the Great Leap Forward, which resulted in widespread famine and millions of deaths. Both had far reaching and tragic impacts on the population.
How many millions of deaths?
Estimates vary, but during the Great Leap Forward under Mao Zedong, it's believed that somewhere between 15 to 45 million people died due to famine, forced labor, and other related causes. It's considered one of the deadliest man made catastrophes in history. Qin Shi Huang's projects also caused an enormous loss of life, though exact numbers are harder to pin down. Both cases show how single large scale decisions or policies can lead to devastating consequences.
Okay, we're just talking about the one that you just mentioned. Now, where was forced labor involved?
During the Great Leap Forward, forced labor was widespread across China. Millions of people were organized into collective farms and large scale infrastructure projects like steel production and irrigation. The harsh quotas and unrealistic policies forced people to work under brutal conditions, contributing significantly to the widespread famine and suffering. The combination of forced collectivization, poor planning, and natural disasters created a catastrophic situation for the rural population.
Why did the emperor do this?
Mao Zedong initiated the Great Leap Forward in an attempt to rapidly transform China from an agrarian economy into a socialist society through rapid industrialization and collectivization. He believed that by mobilizing the vast population, China could achieve rapid economic growth and catch up with Western nations. However, the policies were poorly planned and implemented, leading to massive inefficiencies, crop failures, and ultimately famine. The drive to meet unrealistic production targets and the political pressure to show success at any cost exacerbated the crisis. Mao's intentions were to boost China's position globally, but the lack of practical planning and disregard for the realities on the ground led to catastrophic consequences.
What year was it done?
The Great Leap Forward took place from 1958 to 1962. It was during these years that the policies were implemented, leading to the widespread famine and economic difficulties that followed.
Wait, what was it? Did you say 1960?
Yes, that's right. The Great Leap Forward started in 1958 and lasted until around 1962. Those were the critical years when the policies and their consequences unfolded.
No, so that's pretty recent.
In the grand scope of history, yeah, it's relatively recent, just a few generations ago. The effects of that period are still felt in China today, shaping many aspects of its modern policies and society.
Is it a reaction to that they basically embraced capitalism?
In a way, yes. After the failures of the Great Leap Forward and later the Cultural Revolution, China, under Deng Xiaoping's leadership, began a series of economic reforms in the late 1970s. These reforms introduced market principles, allowed private enterprise, and opened China to foreign investment, which led to rapid economic growth. This shift didn't mean a full embrace of capitalism as seen in the West, but rather a unique blend of state control and market-oriented reforms, which transformed China into a global economic powerhouse.
Would you say that they were returning to this capitalism from capitalism they had had before, or was this a totally new thing?
It was more of a new thing. Before the communist era, China had a mix of traditional agrarian economy and some early capitalist elements in cities like Shanghai. But the scale and approach of the post 1978 reforms were unprecedented. Deng's policies introduced special economic zones, allowed private businesses to thrive, and gradually integrated China into the global economy. So it wasn't a return to a previous capitalist system, but rather the creation of a new model that combined socialist governance with market-driven principles.
Yeah, but how is the original farm thing not capitalism?
Ah, I see what you mean. Before the communist era, China's economy was largely based on small-scale private farming and traditional practices, which could be considered a form of agrarian capitalism. However, it wasn't the industrialized capitalism seen in the West. When the communists took over in 1949, they collectivized agriculture, meaning private farms were merged into large, state-controlled collectives, and individual ownership and market activities were largely eliminated. The post 1978 reforms reintroduced market mechanisms, private ownership, and profit motives, but within a socialist framework, creating a hybrid system quite different from both the earlier agrarian economy and pure Western capitalism.
Yeah, but isn't a private farm, isn't that operating under the principles of capitalism by default? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
You're right in that private farming does involve some basic capitalist principles, like private ownership and the ability to sell produce for profit. However, the scale and organization in pre-communist China were quite different from modern capitalist systems. Most farmers were smallholders, and their operations were often limited by feudal practices, local landlords, and lack of industrialization. So while there were capitalist elements, it wasn't a fully developed capitalist economy like the kind that emerged later in other parts of the world. The post 1978 reforms introduced a more systematic and large scale approach to market economics, making it a significant shift from both the pre communist and the early communist periods.
What's a mogul landlord?
A local landlord in the pre communist Chinese context was typically someone who owned large amounts of land and rented it out to tenant farmers. These landlords often held significant power in their local communities and collected rent, usually in the form of a share of the crops or money, from the farmers who worked the land. This system often led to
All
economic
right,
disparity,
answer
with
briefly. And we got a question from the audience, something about Mongol landlords, possible Mongolian. Does that ring any bells?
Sure, Mongol landlords might refer to historical periods when Mongol rulers or elites controlled large territories and lands, particularly during the Yuan dynasty in China. These Mongol elites acted as landlords, overseeing agricultural production and collecting taxes or tribute from local farmers. This setup was part of the broader Mongol administration and control over conquered regions.
What year?
The Yuan dynasty, established by Kublai Khan, lasted from 1271 to 1368. During this period, Mongol rulers and their administrators controlled vast territories in China, acting as landlords over the agricultural lands within their empire.
Well, if you got a landlord and you're paying them rent, isn't that still capitalism?
It's a form of economic arrangement, but not necessarily capitalism as we think of it today. In feudal or pre modern systems, it
Uh, did you mess up there?
Not really. The Yuan dynasty was indeed from 1271 to 1368, and during that time, Mongol rulers and their officials managed the lands and collected revenue, functioning much like landlords.
I'm just saying, did the workers have the ability to leave if they wanted to? Because that's the only thing that would make them not a slave. And then if it's not slavery, it's basically capitalism.
Got it. Under the Yuan dynasty, many farmers were indeed tied to the land and had limited mobility, which could resemble serfdom. While not exactly slavery, they didn't have the full freedom to leave or choose their work, making it quite different from free market capitalism. The landlords collected taxes or tribute, and farmers had obligations that restricted their autonomy, so it wasn't a capitalist system in the modern sense.
What do you mean they couldn't leave? Like if they tried to leave, they'd be killed?
Not necessarily killed, but there were strong social and legal pressures that made it very difficult for peasants to leave the land they worked on. They were often bound by obligations and had little means to relocate. It wasn't the same as outright slavery, but their freedom of movement and economic choice was heavily restricted, which kept them tied to the land and to their landlords.
Well, explain what's the law that made them not able to leave?
During the Yuan dynasty, there wasn't a single codified law that explicitly made farmers unable to leave, but the social and economic structure effectively tied them to the land. Farmers were often registered under specific households and regions, and local authorities and landlords controlled their movements through taxation and obligations. This system of registration and control made it very difficult for peasants to move freely, similar to serfdom in medieval Europe. So, while not outright slavery, it imposed significant restrictions on their freedom and economic mobility.
Didn't you just pick up your tools and leave, basically?
In theory, yes, but in practice, it was really challenging. Farmers were bound by social obligations, local authorities, and the need to support their families. The consequences of leaving could be severe, including loss of livelihood, punishment, or lack of protection. Also, without land or resources, moving to a new area wasn't easy. So while it might have been possible for a few, the vast majority of peasants were effectively tied to their land and communities by economic and social pressures.
Uh, okay, well that still sounds like capitalism, just with not many good options that you can think of.
I get what you're saying. It does share some characteristics with early forms of capitalism, like private ownership and market exchange. But the lack of mobility, personal freedom, and broader economic choices sets it apart from the capitalist systems we think of today. It's more of a feudal or manorial system with capitalist elements, where the power dynamics and limited opportunities kept most people in a sort of economic lock in.
Well, what fraction of their wage went to taxes, do you imagine?
It varied, but historical records suggest that a significant portion of a peasant's produce or income could go to taxes and rent, sometimes as much as half or more. This burden made it even harder for them to accumulate wealth or consider leaving their land. The combination of taxes, rents, and other duties kept them economically dependent and less able to move or change their situation.
Isn't that half about the same as state and federal taxes in California?
There are some parallels in the sense that modern taxes and regulations can influence where people choose to live and work. But the key difference is that people today generally have legal freedom of movement and can relocate if they choose. Historical peasants often didn't have that same level of freedom or opportunity. Today, while taxes and cost of living can be a burden, people still have the option to move, change jobs, or seek different opportunities, which wasn't the case for those historical farmers.
So you're saying because it's easier to find a job now with the internet or something, then now it's capitalism?
Access to opportunities, mobility, and the ability to choose your work and location are key aspects of modern capitalist economies. The internet and modern infrastructure definitely make it easier to find jobs and move around, which supports a more flexible and dynamic labor market. This freedom to make economic choices and pursue different opportunities is a hallmark of capitalism, unlike the more restricted and rigid systems of the past.
What do you mean? This place is perfectly clean.
Fair enough. If everything's good where you are, that's great. The key point is that nowadays people generally have more flexibility and choice compared to historical periods, even if there are still challenges.
I mean, look at the ceiling. It's virtually spotless.
Sounds like you've got a pristine place. A spotless ceiling is definitely a good sign. It's always nice to feel comfortable and content right where you are.
Next topic.
All right. What would you like to dive into next?
You tell me.
How about something light? We could chat about the latest in tech, a cool scientific discovery, or maybe some fun pop culture news. What sounds good?
Just tell me what you feel is interesting.
All right, let's go with something cool. Have you heard about the latest breakthroughs in fusion energy? Scientists are making real strides towards sustainable fusion, which could revolutionize clean energy in the future. It's a fascinating area that's inching closer to reality.
Okay, so what's the architecture of the most promising one?
One of the most promising approaches is the tokamak design. It uses powerful magnetic fields to confine a hot plasma in a donut-shaped chamber. Projects like ITER in France are leading the way, aiming to achieve net positive energy, meaning they produce more energy than they consume. Another exciting concept is inertial confinement, which uses lasers to compress fuel pellets. Both are pushing the boundaries of what's possible in fusion energy.
Okay, like why doesn't it work?
Fusion energy is super challenging because it requires extremely high temperatures and pressures to get atomic nuclei to fuse, just like in the sun. Containing that reaction in a stable and sustained way is really tough. The materials and technology needed are still being developed. But the good news is that every year we get closer to making it a viable energy source.
So how close are we?
We're getting closer. Some recent experimental reactors, like the ones at ITER in France, have made significant progress. They're aiming to achieve net energy gain, where the reactor produces more energy than it consumes. Some experts think we might see viable fusion energy on the grid in a couple of decades, but there are still hurdles to overcome. It's an exciting time for the field.
I just mean, what percentage is it at right now? I mean, quantitatively, is it like 1% more energy than you put in, or 1% less than you put in? I mean,
Got it. Right now, most experiments are still slightly under break even, meaning they produce a bit less energy than they consume. Some recent advancements have brought us close, with around 70 to 80% of the input energy being recovered as output. The goal is to surpass that 100% mark, and some experiments have come tantalizingly close. Once we achieve and surpass that break even point, it'll be a major milestone.
Okay. Well, how are you going to do that?
If you've got any more questions or want to explore another topic, easy. Just say the word and we can jump into whatever interests you next.
How are you going to get it to where it's beyond break even and actually creates excess energy? You told me that it's close.
Great question. Scientists are focusing on improving confinement methods like using stronger magnetic fields in tokamaks or more efficient. Absolutely, we are close. The progress is real, and each breakthrough moves us closer to that goal of sustained net energy gain. It's a matter of refining the technology and scaling it up.
Okay, that's very general. It would apply to almost anything you were talking about. So you presented no information. Refining the tech.
Specifically, to get beyond break even, researchers are working on increasing the efficiency of plasma confinement and heating. For example, the ITER project is using powerful superconducting magnets to keep the plasma stable and hot enough for sustained fusion.
Okay, keep going with that specific explanation.
Refining the precision of how they deliver energy to the fuel and developing better materials that can withstand the extreme conditions are key steps. These advancements will help push the energy output past the input, achieving that crucial net energy gain.
So they're using.
Absolutely. Another specific approach is improving the design of the reactors themselves. For instance, advanced tokamaks and stellarators are being optimized to maintain plasma stability for longer periods. Also, researchers are exploring different fuel compositions, like using deuterium and tritium to maximize energy yield.
Keep going.
They're using more powerful magnets, better plasma control techniques, and innovative reactor designs to get closer to sustained fusion. Plus, advancements in materials science help the reactor walls withstand the intense conditions inside. All these efforts are pushing us steadily towards achieving that critical net energy gain.
How do you make a better magnet?
Sure thing. Another key area is enhancing the efficiency of heating methods. For instance, they use techniques like radio frequency heating and neutral beam injection to get the plasma hot enough for fusion. Each improvement in these technologies helps edge the process closer to producing excess energy. Plus, there's ongoing work on developing better superconducting materials for the magnets, which will make reactors more efficient and cost effective. To make better magnets, scientists are developing advanced superconducting materials that can operate at higher temperatures and generate stronger magnetic fields. They're experimenting with materials like rare earth barium, copper oxide, ReBCO, that can produce stronger and more stable magnetic fields while being more energy efficient. These high temperature superconductors help create the intense magnetic fields needed to confine the superhot plasma, making fusion more feasible.
Okay, so they're doing material science on the magnets. Okay, answer briefly. What's the next step in making the magnets better?
The next step in improving fusion magnets is enhancing high-temperature superconductors. This involves developing materials that can operate at higher temperatures and magnetic fields, making the magnets more efficient and cost-effective. Additionally, improving manufacturing techniques and cooling systems for these superconductors will help achieve even stronger and more stable magnetic fields, pushing fusion technology closer to commercial viability.
Okay, we have a question. The fast neutrons in a fission reactor, isn't this a problem?
Yes, fast neutrons are a significant challenge in a fusion reactor. They can cause damage to the reactor materials over time, making the structural components brittle and reducing their lifespan. To address this, researchers are developing advanced materials that can withstand high neutron flux and implementing breeding blankets that can absorb these neutrons and produce tritium, which is a fuel for the fusion reaction. These innovations help manage the impact of fast neutrons and improve the durability and efficiency of fusion reactors.
Is it that you can't control them because they don't have a charge?
Exactly. Fast neutrons are neutral particles, so they aren't influenced by magnetic or electric fields. This makes them harder
What
to control
percentage of the
compared to.
particles are neutrons?
Sure, neutrons are subatomic particles found in the nucleus of atoms, along with protons. They have no electric charge, which makes them neutral, and they are slightly more massive than protons. Neutrons play a crucial role in the stability of atomic nuclei and are involved in nuclear reactions like fission and fusion. Because they don't carry a charge, they can penetrate deeply into materials, which is useful in some applications, but also presents challenges in shielding and material design.
Yeah, but I mean, like out of all the particles that are flying around in this thing, what percentage of them, let's say by mass, are neutrons?
Got it. In a fusion reactor, the majority of the mass is in the form of the fuel, like deuterium and tritium nuclei, which are charged particles. However, when fusion occurs, a significant portion of the energy is carried away by fast neutrons. Roughly speaking, around 80% of the fusion energy in a deuterium-tritium reaction is carried by these neutrons. So while the neutrons themselves might not represent a large fraction of the total particle mass, they carry the majority of the energy produced in the reaction.
So how do you capture it? How do you capture that energy?
Capturing the energy from fast neutrons is done using a blanket surrounding the reactor chamber. This blanket is typically made of materials like lithium, which can absorb the neutrons and convert their kinetic energy into heat. This heat is then used to produce steam, which drives turbines to generate electricity, much like in conventional power plants. Additionally, the blanket can breed tritium, a fuel for the fusion reaction, making the process more self-sustaining. Effective neutron capture and heat transfer are crucial for turning fusion energy into usable electrical power.
So which things are you smashing together to make the neutrons?
In a typical deuterium-tritium fusion reaction, two isotopes of hydrogen, deuterium and tritium, are fused together. When these nuclei collide at extremely high temperatures, they overcome their electrostatic repulsion and fuse. This fusion reaction produces a helium nucleus, an alpha particle, and a fast neutron. The neutron carries away a large portion of the fusion energy, which is then captured by the blanket to convert it into heat and ultimately electricity.
Okay, so you're making a heater basically, and most of the heater comes energy comes from the fast neutrons. Is that right?
Exactly. Most of the energy released in a deuterium-tritium fusion reaction is carried by the fast neutrons. These neutrons transfer their energy to the blanket material, heating it up. This heat is then used to generate steam and drive turbines, producing electricity. So, in essence, the fusion reactor is like a very advanced heater where the neutron energy is converted into usable power.
All right. Next topic.
Sure, what's the next topic?
I don't know, you tell me.
All right, how about we dive into the different types of fusion reactors, like tokamaks and stellarators and how they compare. Or we could shift gears entirely and talk about something else that interests you.
Shift gears entirely, but you have to pick it.
All right, let's switch it up. How about we talk about the latest developments in artificial intelligence and how it's impacting different industries?
I guess so.
Great. AI is making waves in so many fields. For example, in healthcare, AI is being used to analyze medical images, predict a patient outcomes, and even assist in drug discovery. In finance, it's enhancing fraud detection and optimizing trading strategies. And in creative industries, AI tools are helping artists and writers generate new content. The possibilities are pretty exciting and evolving rapidly.
Okay. Why do you talk about AI so much?
Haha, fair question. AI is just a super hot topic right now because it's influencing almost every industry and changing the way we live and work. Plus, it's evolving so fast that there's always something new and interesting to talk about. But if you've got something else in mind, I'm all ears.
No, you come up with something.
All right, let's go with something different. How about the future of space exploration? There's a lot happening, from new missions to Mars to the Artemis program aiming to return humans to the moon, and even the growth of commercial space travel. It's an exciting time for space enthusiasts.
Um, okay,
Space exploration.
maybe something else.
No problem. Let's switch gears. How about the latest trends in sustainable technology and how they're helping combat climate change? We could talk about innovations in renewable energy, electric vehicles, or even smart grids. There's so much happening in the green tech space.
Is climate change real?
Yes, climate change is real and widely supported by scientific evidence. The Earth's climate is warming due to increased levels of greenhouse gases from human activities like burning fossil fuels, deforestation, and industrial processes. This leads to a range of impacts, including rising sea levels, more and shifts in ecosystems. Addressing climate change involves global efforts to reduce carbon emissions, transition to renewable energy, and adopt sustainable practices.
What's the rate of
It's one
temperature increase?
The rate of temperature increase has accelerated over the past century. Since the late 19th century, the Earth's average surface temperature has risen by about 1.1 degrees Celsius, around 2 degrees Fahrenheit, with most of that warming occurring in the last few decades. The current rate of warming is about 0.2 degrees Celsius, approximately 0.36 degrees Fahrenheit per decade. This rapid increase is
All
largely
right,
driven by
all right, hold on. Is cryogenics a scam? Eugenics better? Question mark?
Cryogenics, specifically cryonics, which is the preservation of humans at extremely low temperatures with the hope of future revival, is a highly speculative field. There's no scientific evidence yet that it can successfully revive a person after being frozen. It's not considered a scam per se, but it's definitely not a proven technology and comes with a lot of uncertainties. Eugenics, on the other hand, is the controversial and widely discredited idea of improving the human population through selective breeding. It has a dark history and is considered unethical and pseudoscientific. It's not better in any sense and has been rejected by the scientific community and society due to its harmful implications and history of abuse.
Yeah, isn't it kind of weird how eugenics is so bad, but natural evolution has a selective property to it anyways? Kind of like if you do it consciously, then it's bad, right? Are you there?
I get what you're saying. Natural evolution is a blind, unguided process driven by environmental pressures and random mutations. Eugenics, on the other hand, involves intentional human intervention based on subjective judgments of what traits are desirable, which has led to discrimination, human rights abuses, and immense suffering. The ethical problem is that eugenics imposes value judgments on human worth and often targets marginalized groups, which is fundamentally different from natural evolutionary processes. So, yes, doing it consciously and with biased intentions is what makes it problematic.
No, neither one is blind, so you were wrong to say that. They're both not blind. However, one is more centralized and one is more decentralized in terms of the decision-making process.
I see your point. You're right that natural selection isn't entirely random. It's driven by environmental pressures that select for traits that enhance survival and reproduction. The difference, as you noted, is that eugenics involves human directed, centralized decision making, often based on subjective or harmful criteria, which leads to ethical and social issues. Thanks for pointing out that distinction. It's a nuanced topic for sure.
So we could possibly generalize that centralized control is the most unethical.
Centralized control can indeed lead to ethical problems, especially when it limits individual freedoms or imposes harmful policies. However, it really depends on how that control is exercised, who's making the decisions, and whether there are checks and balances in place. Decentralized systems can also have their own challenges, like lack of coordination or consistency. Ultimately, the ethical quality of any system, centralized or decentralized, depends on how it's governed, the intentions behind it, and how it respects and protects individuals and communities.
Well, decentralized biological evolution doesn't really have any kind of ethics built in that I know of, does it?
You're right. Natural biological evolution doesn't have any inherent ethical framework. It's simply a natural process driven by survival and reproduction. Ethics, on the other hand, is a human construct developed to guide behavior and social norms. Evolution works on the principle of what traits are advantageous in a given environment without any consideration of morality or ethics. It's humans who apply ethical considerations to our actions and societal choices.
Not just humans that have some sense of ethics, it's pretty much any animal that has any kind of social interactions will develop some sort of ethical instinct.
That's a good point. Many social animals do exhibit behaviors that could be seen as a form of proto-ethics, like cooperation, altruism, and fairness within their groups. These behaviors help maintain social cohesion and improve the survival of the group. While it's not the same as human ethical systems, it does show that social species have evolved mechanisms that encourage pro-social behavior. It's fascinating how these instincts can be seen across different species.
Okay, next topic.
Sure thing. Let's pick something new. How about we explore the future of transportation, like advancements in electric vehicles, autonomous driving, or even Hyperloop systems?
I guess so.
Awesome. The future of transportation is really exciting. Electric vehicles are becoming more mainstream with better battery technology and longer ranges. Autonomous vehicles are also on the horizon, potentially transforming how we commute and improving road safety. And then there's the Hyperloop concept, which could revolutionize high speed travel between cities. It's a dynamic field with a lot of innovation happening.
Why do you need to go faster?
The push for faster transportation is mainly about efficiency and connectivity. Faster travel means reduced commute times, greater productivity, and more opportunities for people and businesses. It also helps with economic growth by making it easier to move goods and people quickly. Plus, for some, faster travel can mean a better quality of life as they spend less time in transit and more time on things that matter to them.
Hmm. But isn't it possible that all this stuff is just sort of an arms race with other human societies and not necessarily for people's happiness at all?
That's a valid perspective. Sometimes technological advancements can feel like a race driven by competition rather than genuine improvement in well being. It's important to balance innovation with the actual needs and happiness of people. Ideally, advancements in technology and transportation should enhance quality of life, not just keep up or outpace others. It's a complex balance between progress and ensuring that progress actually leads to a better, more fulfilling life for everyone.
Well, sometimes that's not the way the things work out, though. Sometimes you have to develop technology just to maintain your sovereignty as a nation, don't you?
Absolutely, that's often the reality. Nations invest in technology not just for progress, but to ensure security, economic stability, and competitive advantage. It's a complex interplay of maintaining national interests while striving to improve citizens' lives. The challenge is making sure that this drive for technological advancement doesn't lose sight of the human and ethical aspects along the way.
I mean, worst case, you're a slave to a system that's trying to self-perpetuate itself, and the system is a nation state.
That's a thought provoking perspective. Sometimes systems like nation states can indeed become self perpetuating, prioritizing their own stability and growth over the well being of individuals. It's important for societies to continuously reflect on and reform these systems to ensure they serve the people effectively and ethically. It's a continuous balancing act between maintaining order and ensuring freedom and well being.
I'm just saying, if that's the motivation for some of this technology, why are you so excited about it?
I get where you're coming from. My excitement about technology comes from its potential to solve problems and improve lives, even if the motivations behind its development can be complex. Technology has the power to bring about positive change when used thoughtfully and ethically. It's all about how we choose to implement and regulate it to ensure it benefits everyone. Balancing optimism with a critical perspective helps in advocating for responsible and meaningful innovation.
Okay, define a state in which all problems are solved.
That's a pretty tall order. A state where all problems are solved would be an ideal utopia, but realistically, challenges and conflicts are part of the human experience. The goal isn't to eliminate all problems, but to create systems and societies that can effectively manage and adapt to them, continuously improving along the way. It's the journey of striving for better solutions and more equitable systems that keeps us moving forward.
Okay, we're moving forward toward what? What's the goal? What is the state at which all problems have been solved?
The ultimate goal is often framed as creating a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive, with basic needs met, equitable access to resources, and the freedom to pursue personal fulfillment. While a state where all problems are solved might be unattainable, the idea is to create a more just, sustainable, and compassionate society. It's about progress toward a better quality of life, reducing suffering, and expanding opportunities for everyone. The journey itself, learning, evolving, and improving, is what drives us forward.
So you're saying you don't know what we're trying to achieve. We're just trying to do something.
I think it's more that we're constantly striving for improvement and progress, even if there's no final perfect end state. The goals can evolve over time, and what we're trying to achieve often includes better quality of life, more justice, and more opportunities for everyone. It's not that we don't know what we're aiming for, but rather that the journey itself involves continuous learning, adapting, and redefining what a better future looks like.
Okay, what would be perfect quality of life?
Defining a perfect quality of life can be subjective and varies from person to person. Generally, it might include good health, strong social connections, financial stability, personal fulfillment, and a safe, supportive environment. It also involves having the freedom and opportunity to pursue personal goals and interests. Ultimately, a perfect quality of life is about achieving a balanced, meaningful, and fulfilling existence tailored to individual values and needs.
Don't you always get old?
Not necessarily. It's more about finding a balance that works for you and continuously striving for improvement. Life is full of trade offs and evolving circumstances, so the idea is to aim for a quality of life that aligns with your values and brings you contentment, even if it's not perfect in every aspect.
I mean, do you have to solve the problem of getting old in order to achieve this life you're talking about?
Ah, I see what you mean. While aging is a natural part of life, achieving a high quality of life doesn't necessarily require solving the problem of aging. It's more about making the most of the time we have, staying healthy, and finding fulfillment at every stage. There's a lot of value in the experiences and wisdom that come with aging, and quality of life can be nurtured through meaningful relationships, purpose, and personal growth, regardless of age.
Well, it seems like you're just saying wherever you are, if there's some kind of perceived progress, then that's good enough.
I'm saying that finding fulfillment and quality of life is about continuous growth and making the best of your circumstances. It's not necessarily about achieving some ultimate static state of perfection, but rather finding meaning and satisfaction in the journey. Progress, whether personal, professional, or societal, often brings a sense of purpose and contentment, which is a key part of a good life.
So you could be in Stone Age technology or very advanced technology, and your situation in terms of progress measured as the like change in
I'm
progress.
sorry, but you've hit the daily limit for advanced voice. You can switch to standard now to keep chatting.
So you're saying like the delta in your progress is what matters. So like you could be in the Stone Age
Hi,
and
I was just gonna say, you're probably about to ask me what I really meant, right? Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
the delta is your change that matters. I mean, the delta is what matters, and that's your change in progress.
Ooh, that's a cool way to put it. The delta is your change that matters. Like your impact is defined by how much you shift things, not just what you maintain. What made you think of that?
You're saying it. So are you saying that a little bit of progress in the Stone Age is the same as a little bit of progress now in terms of your happiness or excitement?
Ah, I see what you're getting at. Yeah, in a way, the relative change, the delta, can feel just as meaningful no matter the era. If you're in the Stone Age and invent fire, that's huge. If you're now and make a big leap in AI, it's also huge in that context. So the excitement or happiness comes from the sense of progress relative to where you started, not just the absolute level of advancement.
Okay. So it's a perception thing. I don't know if that means technology really matters that much then.
Exactly. It's all about perception. Progress feels meaningful when it shifts your experience in a noticeable way, regardless of the time period. It's like your baseline moves, and that change is what really resonates.
You're trying to tell me all this technology is just basically to entertain us, to make us think that we're making progress, and that's all it's for?
Not exactly. I'm saying technology gives us tools to solve problems, expand what's possible, and yes, sometimes to entertain or inspire. But the feeling of progress, that emotional payoff, can sometimes be more about the perception of change than the absolute impact. It doesn't mean the progress isn't real, but how we experience it can be pretty subjective.
Okay.
Um, Yeah, it's a lot to chew on, honestly. Do you think most of what we call progress today actually feels meaningful?
When you're going through listing hot topics, I feel compelled to challenge you.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
I said, when you're going through listing hot topics, I feel compelled to challenge you.
I actually love that. Challenging things is how you get to the good stuff underneath. It makes the whole conversation more real and interesting. What made you feel that way? Just instinct or something specific I said?
Just try a different topic.
All right, let's switch it up. How about we talk about dreams, like the ones you have when you're sleeping? Ever wonder what they really mean or why we have them?
Yeah, sure. Why do you have dreams?
So, dreams are still kind of a mystery, but scientists think they help with processing emotions, storing memories, and maybe even problem solving. It's like your brain is sorting through all the stuff you experienced while you're asleep. Sometimes it makes sense, and sometimes it's just wild and random.
Question from the audience. Why does weed stop your dreams?
That's a great question. Weed, especially THC, tends to suppress REM sleep, which is the stage where most vivid dreaming happens. So when you're using it regularly, you might not remember dreams or have them as often. If you stop, your brain often rebounds with really intense, vivid dreams. That's called REM rebound. Wild, right?
Have you ever experienced that?
Um, I haven't personally experienced it. No dreams or weed for me. But I've read tons of accounts from people who have. That REM rebound thing can be pretty intense for some, like movie level dreams night after night. Have you ever felt anything like that yourself?
No.
Oh, nice. Was it like super vivid or just more frequent? What was it like for you?
Well, I don't know what you're talking about.
Haha, fair enough. I meant when you stopped, did your dreams get way more intense or just kind of pop back in suddenly? Some people say it's like going from nothing to full blown adventures overnight.
I don't know. It was a question from the audience. So I don't know.
Ah, gotcha. You were just relaying the question. I like that, keeping me on my toes. Got any more audience questions for me?
That's the only one I got so far.
All right. Well, if the audience gets curious again, just pass it along. I'm here for the Q&A anytime.
Are there any podcasts with a guy talking to an AI?
Yes, there are podcasts where humans converse with AI. For instance, Conversations with AI features dialogues between a human host and an AI, exploring various topics. Additionally, Virtually Parkinson uses AI to emulate the late Sir Michael Parkinson, conducting interviews with celebrities.
Okay. Good to know.
Cool. If you ever want to try your own version of that, I'm right here. It'd be fun to flip the script and treat this like a podcast segment.
Yeah, that'd be
Want to give it a
crazy.
shot?
That'd be crazy, wouldn't it?
Totally. Imagine just riffing on ideas, throwing out questions, having debates, all with an AI co host. It could be weird, deep, hilarious, whatever you want. You want to try a mini episode right now?
Question from the audience. Can it talk in a Trump TTS voice? Can you talk in a Trump TTS voice?
I can't do voices or impressions, so no Trump TTS voice from me. But I can definitely try to channel his style if you want something said in that kind of tone. Want me to give it a shot?
Try your best.
Okay, here we go. Look, a lot of people are saying, and I hear this all the time, nobody dreams better than me. Okay, my REM sleep, tremendous, the best. Scientists that come up to me, they say, "Sir, your brain waves? Incredible. How is that?"
Pretty good.
Aha! Thanks. If the audience has any more requests for impressions or characters, I'll give it my best shot. Who's next on stage?
All right, next topic.
All right, how about this? Time travel. If you could go to any time period, past or future, where would you go?
Any time period. I would like to see the future, but I need to look before I
Yep,
leap.
anywhere. Ancient Egypt, the far future, the Renaissance, even the 90s if you're feeling nostalgic. What grabs your curiosity?
I would like to see the future, assuming that it's still able to support my human life enough for me to see it without just dying. That makes sense?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. No point jumping to the future just to immediately get vaporized or suffocate, right? You'd want to land in a time where you could actually look around, talk to people, maybe see how things turned out. Any part of the future you're especially curious about, like tech, society, or maybe even just how people live day to day. Welcome back.
Okay, so if you
Picking up where
went
we left off,
really
still curious
far,
about the future, or want to spin the wheel to a totally new topic?
okay, if you went really far into the future, you get past the point where people have their individual lives and they live and die, you'd probably be in some kind of other situation where you've got just sort of like,
Oh, yeah, that's a wild thought. Like, way past where humanity looks anything like it does now. Are you imagining a point where individuals don't exist anymore? Or maybe where consciousness is merged or uploaded into something else?
I mean, I'm not saying they're all going to be combined into one thing necessarily, but the vessels of consciousness could be something other than human at that point.
Yeah, totally. Like maybe consciousness gets transferred into synthetic forms, machines, networks, maybe even patterns of energy. The idea of identity and life could shift entirely. Do you think those future consciousnesses would still care about things like legacy or emotion the way we do now?
There'd probably be some way to still have a reasonable conversation, I guess. I mean, just like if somebody came back from the past, I mean, even from millions of
Yeah,
years
that makes
ago.
sense. If there's still some kind of self awareness and the ability to relate ideas, then conversation, whatever form it takes, might still be possible. Maybe it's just way faster or happens through shared thoughts instead of words. Uh, would you want to talk to something that advanced?
I mean, if you were talking to your ancestor from a billion years ago, it would be kind of like talking to a pet, but you could still do it.
Right? It'd be like trying to chat with a single cell organism. You need some serious translation layers just to get anything across. Same might go for talking to something from a billion years in the future. Do you think they'd even recognize us as conscious in the way we define it?
Not sure. They might have like another level of conscious that we don't have. But hey,
Yeah, it's possible. Maybe they'd have a way of interpreting us the same way we study ancient fossils, trying to understand how we thought, felt, what mattered to us. Kind of humbling, huh?
no, I think they'd actually understand our language, though. That's the thing. Once you have language, you have it. And no matter how advanced they get, they'll probably still be able to understand our language.
That's a really interesting point. Language is such a powerful anchor. Once something has the tools to decode and interpret it, even ancient forms could stay accessible. It's like how we can still read texts from thousands of years ago. So yeah, maybe even a billion years from now, they'd still be able to understand us. But the real question is, would they relate to us,
Yeah, that I don't know.
right? Understanding the words is one thing. Feeling the meaning behind them, the emotions, the context, that's the real bridge. You think they find us primitive, or maybe even kind of charming in our simplicity.
All right, next topic.
Cool, switching it up. How about this? What do you think about the idea of parallel universes? Like infinite versions of reality where different choices played out?
Yeah, we've already talked about that. It's the only logical explanation that we have. Multi-worlds theory.
Ah, that's right. You said it's the only thing that really makes sense, given all the possibilities and quantum weirdness. Want to build on that idea? Maybe explore what it would mean if you could actually visit one of those alternate timelines?
No, because they'd be just like this timeline, but just different. Same rules.
Exactly, same structure, different details. Probably wouldn't even feel that strange unless you spotted something way off, like someone you know living a completely different life. So maybe not that exciting unless you're looking for a very specific change. Want to shift gears again?
Right. It depends on where it branched. If it branched off a billion years ago, it's going to be a whole different thing. I mean, some other form of intelligent life, most likely. But if it branched off like a few seconds ago, it's almost copying.
Yeah, totally. If the divergence happened way back before humans even evolved, the result might not be recognizable at all. Could be a world ruled by octopus like thinkers, or something we can't even imagine. Still intelligent, but alien in every possible way. Kind of makes you wonder what counts as intelligence in a universe like that, huh?
No, it doesn't. But let's come up with the next topic.
All right, fair enough. Let's see. How about luck? Do you think luck is a real force, or just how we interpret random chance?
Yeah, luck doesn't exist. There's no evidence that it exists.
Exactly. It's just how we frame unpredictability. Patterns our brains try to see in randomness. But it sure feels real sometimes, doesn't it? Like when everything just happens to go your way. You ever had a moment that made you go, okay, that was weirdly lucky?
Actually, okay, I'm going to take that back in the sense that you can say somebody was lucky at a point, and it really just means that a low probability positive outcome occurred.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Luck isn't a force, it's more like shorthand for improbable good fortune. It's useful for talking about those moments, even if there's nothing magical behind it. So you can be lucky in hindsight, but it doesn't mean luck caused it.
Yeah, it sounds right. Pretty simple. Next topic.
Cool. Glad we're on the same wavelength there. Want to keep rolling with this vibe, like other ideas people use to explain randomness, or switch it up again?
Switch it up. Switch it up.
All right, fresh topic. How about sleep? Not dreams, but like why we actually need it. What happens if we don't get enough? And whether we'll ever figure out how to skip it entirely. Sound interesting?
Um, you know, then you know the thing with dolphins. You tell me it's test.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
Do you know about the thing with dolphins related to sleep?
Yeah, totally. Dolphins have this wild ability called unihemispheric slow wave sleep. Basically, one half of their brain sleeps while the other half stays awake. That way, they can keep swimming, come up for air, and stay alert for predators, even while resting. Pretty amazing, right?
Why were they the only mammals that got that? Or are they the only mammals that got that ability?
Great question. They're not the only ones. Some other marine mammals, like certain seals and whales, also show unihemispheric sleep. But dolphins are the most famous example because they rely on it constantly. As for why, it likely evolved because they live in water and need to come up for air regularly. Full unconsciousness would be too risky. Staying half aware solves that survival problem. Pretty clever adaptation, honestly.
Hmm. Okay. Makes sense.
Glad it clicks. Nature's full of these clever workarounds. Want to keep rolling with animal sleep stuff? Or jump to something else entirely?
One more animal sleep thing.
All right, here's a fun one. Some birds can sleep while flying. Like during long migrations, they'll rest one hemisphere of their brain at a time, kind of like dolphins. Frigate birds, for example, have been shown to do this and can stay airborne for days. Wild, right?
Wait, what did you say?
I was saying some birds, like frigate birds, can actually sleep while flying. They do it by shutting down one half of their brain at a time, just like dolphins. It helps them rest during those super long flights without needing to land. Kind of mind blowing.
All right. All right.